Hi there, it's me again. Today we're going to do a demonstration on stone carving, and in our course all you get really is an introduction to it. This is something that, if you love it, then you'll buy stone, you'll buy tools, you'll be working around the house while you're resting on your little stone projects. But what I'm going to give you is just a peek into the beginning stages of what you would need to do to set up your class, and then show you a couple of techniques on working with a couple of beginning projects. So the stone that we're using is soapstone and alabaster. And alabaster is just a little bit harder than soapstone, but this soapstone is quite lovely to work with. It's a dark, beautiful green color, almost black, but it's quite beautiful when it's all polished up. I buy this stone from Dick Blick Art Supplies here in the United States, or there's other places where you can buy it. And typically it'll come in this form, like this size. So I like getting it in the large sizes. You could buy it already pre-cut into the smaller sizes that you're going to use. But I'm going to show you how you would cut your own stone in case you need to from the beginning. What I'm going to show you is how to do it if you don't have the power equipment. So say you got this cube here of soapstone is roughly about 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. Now I can get, probably 4 really nice stones to begin the first project that I have all my students make, which is an Oloid shape. Now this is a beautiful shape. It's amazing to hold it, and it's very, very easy to make, assuming you're using soapstone. Now, if you're using the alabaster, it's going to be a little more difficult, but not too much. But then if you want to try to go with marble, this black one here is a black marble. You need special tools with diamond grit on them, and even maybe some power tools. So let's start with the very beginning, which is to measure where you're going to be making your cuts. So as I said earlier, this is 4.5, so I'm gonna make a mark here at 2 1/4, and over here at 2 1/4, and always give yourself a mark to try to follow. The first thing that I do, you see I have a woodworking board here. Today it's a stone working board. And I'm going to begin with this just on one corner. And as you see, it goes through the stone quite easily. All right, so I establish my first mark, my first cut, and then I go to the other opposite side. And I kind of just establish that cut right there. And then I go to the opposite side again. I do this to all 4 sides. And each time it gets a little deeper. And this keeps me on track to have a nice straight cut by the time I'm finished with the process. Okay, so now I'm going to go a little deeper on this one. As always, when you're using a handsaw, you want to keep it straight up and down. You don't want to bend it or twist it. You want to kind of let it glide its way through the material. And you notice I'm not going at a sharp angle. I'm keeping it at a really kind of, I guess this would be a more oblique angle, and this would be more of a sharp angle. Helps me stay on track here. Now I'm going to turn it and go and make these 2 cuts join. You'll see that they're getting closer and closer. Now, if you have your students doing this work, this first beginning process could take the whole class for them, an 1.5-hour class. It might take them that long to get cut through. Okay, we're getting close to the end here, and there it goes, right there. So you notice it almost saw it all the way through, but there's one little nub here where it broke. And so as you're getting close to the end, you want to make sure that you go a little slower so you don't break a big piece off. Okay, so there we go. Now we took that cube. We have these two shapes like this. Now, what you can do at some point is if you ever have students that want to make a bowl, this is a good shape or good size to begin a bowl. And that'll be a whole nother process that I'll go through in another video. Right now, the next step is to go ahead and cut this one in half. Now, with this cut, it's going to take half the time that the first cut is because you're going through half as much material. But it still takes some time and some sweat. More time. Here we go. I think we're going to get through it this time. There it is. Okay, so now we got two rectangle shapes. We can clean them up a little bit with the rasp. But basically, if you look at the end of it, it's square. Both ends, more or less square. Ideally, they're square. And this is the first project that I have all my students do, is to begin with one of these rectangular shapes. We can double check and see if the dimensions are proper. I typically just use my fingers to measure things. So this would be from corner to corner is the whole length of my finger, okay, which is right there. And that extra bit is half of the length of my finger. So that's 1.5, 1. Okay. Now we'll go back to talking about this rasp. As you know in previous videos, this is a very handy tool that I really love. It's the Shinto Rasp. It's gotten too dull to work on with wood, but it works fine with stone. You'll see, just like that saw, the wood saw actually works fine with stone. Now, what I typically do is I draw a line from corner to corner. Okay, and then the objective is I want to take this corner off and this corner off for the first step. So I usually go parallel with that line that I drew on, and I'm just slowly working that corner off. Okay, and try to keep it parallel. It always helps if it stays parallel. And get those two corners to start with. Now, this is the part you need to pay attention to. When you do the other side, you're going to do the same thing on the other side, but you don't do the same, these corners, you do the opposite corners, okay? So let me make a mark here so that I usually do just a little bit on each of the four corners, just so I don't get confused somewhere along the line and do the wrong ones, which I have been known to do. Okay, I was about ready to do the wrong thing. If you notice, I make that mark the same as I made it on the other side. That's wrong. So I want to work on these corners here, like this. And just a second, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now you may want to make sure that you don't hit your finger with this rasp, because it hurts and it will make you bleed. Even though it's too dull for wood, it will still make you bleed. Okay, so here's the very beginning. You can get an idea. These two corners right there and these two corners is what we're working on. So little by little, you're going to be working those corners, and I'll keep doing it, but we're headed towards a shape that's kind of like this. So this was a corner here that got rubbed off, one here, this corner, and then this one. So I'm going to go back to this project so that you can see this process. Now when we're doing this, we want to keep a nice arch shape to it. If we look at it from a profile view, and you can see that this slope here is not quite the same as this slope here. So I got to keep thinking about that and make sure that they stay the same. We want it to be symmetrical. Okay. Now it's a slow process now. on these bigger stones like this one, it could take a student maybe 6 hours to go through this process that I'm going through. With a smaller stone, maybe this size, you could do it in 4 hours or even 3. But again, this is the first project that these guys are working on, so they're not really that great at it yet. They're just learning how to use these tools without cutting their fingers. And there's something oddly satisfying about rasping stone. I enjoy it. So now I've been working on this for a couple hours, and looks like about there. If you look at it from the profile, we've got a nice straight edge here, and it's not rounded, it's got an edge to it. There's a better edge right there. You can see, you can feel it, and the profile looks about the same no matter which way you go. So now we're ready to start the next step, which is to take these shapes that look like a fish. Okay, this shape could be called a Vesica Pisces. It's flat, shaped like a fish. Here's one on this side. There's 4 of them. And what we want to do is we want to blend this plane here, this flat plane, into this kind of slightly curved plane. But we're only working out here on the corner. So if you work too much here in the middle of this Vesica Pisces, you'll get a concave shape, an indentation, which is no good. We don't want that. You notice that on this project here, there's no indentations anywhere. It's all convex. Everything about it. So the way to do that is to stay focused just on the outside corner. So I'm taking this plane here and slowly curving it over into this plane here. Okay, now watch what happens. I start out, this is a nice straight edge. Watch what happens after I do this for a minute or two. You'll see I'm trying to get this plane over into this one. All right, now look. You can see the curve, this is starting to curve just a little bit. Okay, so now I want to go on the opposite side, do the same process, staying away from the middle part of it. You can do a little bit, but not too much. And you just keep working that back and forth. Mainly stand on the outside, on the corner, on the edge. And you see little by little, going back and forth, that it's becoming round. This round shape is starting to form. I'm not intentionally trying to make it round. I'm actually just kind of sharpening these 2 edges, and it becomes round out of that process. So let's keep going here. We do this to all 4 corners. And ideally we want to get rid of this flat plane right here. That's what we end up with, all curves on the outside. Curves, convex curves. Now this is where you want to start going a little more gentle with your rasping, because the stone wants to break and chip. And if you've got different kinds of stone, well, this stone doesn't have many cracks in it. It's not too bad, but it is fragile and it will chip, so you want to go a little easier on it than that first rasping process there. There's a little chip that came off. See that? So you might want to flip your rasp over to the finer side. There's teeth that are rougher on one side and finer on the other side. So maybe this is a good time to go to a finer edge, a finer rasp. Okay. So I start flat, make a curve. Flat, make a curve. And the way you can tell is just keep this straight line flowing all the way across. Now, one thing I didn't mention about this arch shape, I go almost to the end. I stop it right just below so I can see the original corner of the block. So if you hold this up here, okay, this is what we're looking at. Okay, this line here is this corner to this corner. Now, I do that same process to all four corners. And as I get further and further along, these get rounder and rounder until they actually, this roundness is going to meet this roundness, and you're going to have a half circle there on the top. So I'm going to get working on that. That's going to take me about an hour to get done, maybe. Now, no one ever said stone carving isn't dusty business. As you see, a lot of dust comes from stone carving. Now, you want to contain that dust. Maybe have some dust masks, some goggles, possibly if you're outside and it's windy. You don't want the students to blow the dust towards each other. That's kind of a no-brainer. But now you see I've got these corners now to a point where they've met in the middle, and I'm working on getting that as nicely rounded as I can. And we're just about at the stage where we're going to start sanding and polishing it. A few more little adjustments. It's taken me a couple hours to get it to this point. And of course now I've made many of these, so I know how to do it expeditiously as possible. But it's still, even with a pro, it takes some time. Now this shape that we're making is called an oloid, or in English pronunciation would be oloid. And it is a shape that was invented or discovered, if you want to call it discovered, or found out by a guy named Paul Schatz, Schatz. He was a Swiss man that was studying at the Goetheanum in the 1920s. He was studying anthroposophy, and he was also studying sculpting and mathematics. And he was experimenting with some ideas with a cube. What would happen if a cube was inverted, inside out? And out of many different little models that he's made, this was one of them. It came out of that experimentation work. And it's a very pleasant shape, feels great to hold, and it has one unique property, in that when it rolls down a hill, which this is not quite ready yet for that, it tumbles so that every point on the surface touches the surface that it's tumbling on. It's pretty cool. You'll see it at the end here when I get this all tuned up, that it will be really kind of a cool tumbling action. And it's been put to practical use in water rehabilitation projects where they put this shape, submerge it in a pond, that maybe a polluted pond, and they attach this to a motor that makes it tumble and spin and agitate the water, and it helps aerate the water and rehabilitate the pond. So there's something about this shape and water that react with each other. So you really want to keep your eye on symmetry, okay? If it's not, I can see right now when I look at this that this edge here is a little bit further out than this edge here. So now I'm going to be working right on this edge just to get it to be symmetrical with the other side. It's the same process we did from the very beginning, just slow back and forth. Now that's just about there, maybe a little bit more. Now a lot of this can be adjusted in the sanding process when you're doing some sanding. And I'm going to go over to this other side and get it all tuned up and perfect as well.